Molly, I'm so exhausted. I cannot even cry anymore. It's a week I haven't got a proper sleep. Nobody here has either. And I know they don't even want to try. Better to keep busy in a way or other, so we don't have to stop and think. I can see in Albus' eyes the shock. I can see in James' one something even worse, savage and scary. I knew Harry's life could never have been an easy one. I guessed it when his parents were being killed. He was confirmed when he went to Hogwarts. He didn't change when he defeated you know who. He was totally unaware of the consequences of it. He lived with us, protected without his knowledge from the world outside, unaware of how the situation was growing out of all proportion. Everybody was canvassing you know who's bringing down. Everybody was looking frantically for him. Nothing else was talked about in every corner of the world. His pictures were published everywhere. Bank holiday after bank holiday was proclaimed in his honor. Even his birthday became a bank holiday. Harry Potter's Day. Can you imagine what it all meant? People were going utterly insane. Some were scaring their love and admiration, some other scaring their hate. We ought to protect him for his own good. And he was still greatly shaken, absolutely not up to cope with a situation of that kind. He couldn't stay quiet for a moment, jumping at every sudden movement. He was in and out from the house continuously, walking about the garden and getting in, slumping on the sofa for a minute and then out again. He begged me to give him chores to keep him busy, and he was sleeping poorly. More than once, we had been awakened in a jerk by his nocturnal screams. He had frightful nightmares, the poor dear. Me and Arthur were very undecided whether to intervene, but we decided against it in the end. We were afraid he could feel mortified for something he could not control. We were sure that at the mere mention of it, he would have felt so much a burden as to make him consider leaving us, and that ought to be avoided at all costs. Ron was following him in his whereabouts, but it seemed not to be of any use. He grew up with the goal of defeating you know who, and now that he was left bereft of it, was disoriented. He is a person who cannot work without an object. It was McGonagall who gave him a new one. She was visiting very often to check how he was coping and to strengthen the protective spells on the house to avoid any intruders. She advised him on the step to take in case he still wished to become an Auror. Books to study, workout to follow, pieces of magic to practice and learn. It helped amazingly. The strain over mind and body helped him to calm down. He was getting up at dawn to run. Ron never wake up before 10. And by midday he was so worn out that he didn't have the energy to spring about as usual, and the afternoon was spent in studying. He was also sleeping better. I knew he was dating Ginny. I knew he went to Hogsmeade very often to meet her, but I didn't mind. Ginny had a frightful crush since the age of 10, and I was happy for her. But this is what I thought it was. A teenage crush, destined to wither away very quickly. When Harry told us of his intention to marry her, we were flabbergasted. The boy was 18, Ginny 17. They were so young, so inexperienced. We obviously gave our consent straight away, and mind, I always loved Harry as a son of my own. He was an amazing boy, very easy to love, ever so polite and unassuming. I loved the idea to have him in the family. But as the husband of my only daughter, of that I wasn't that sure. Jenny has been long desired. Arthur wanted a girl. I wanted a girl. Although, when Bill came, we weren't disappointed. We would have liked a girl, But it was our fourth child, and it didn't matter that much. And Bill has always been perfect, under every aspect, making us proud every day of his life. Thus, we considered ourselves very lucky to have had him. When Charlie came, we were still not disappointed, happy to give Bill a playfellow. When Percy came, we were disappointed. 3 was starting to be intense, and I wasn't sure to want any more. Our house wasn't that big back then, and Arthur's salary a meager one. I couldn't work because the boy took up all my time. But the desire of a girl was stronger, and we tried again. When Fred and George came, I wanted to cry. In one shot we got 2 more, in a house that barely held 3. Arthur has always been a dear though, positive and cheerful, always found a solution to anything. He worked hard on the house to add pieces and bits, and despite it was far from being perfect, I doted on it, because he had poured so much love in it. And he was so positive and full of enthusiasm that when he asked me to try again, I couldn't refuse him. He wanted a daughter so much. And then Ron came. Definitely not a girl, and definitely another mouth to feed, another boy to check. Up to Percy had been extremely lucky because despite 3, they all of them had the sweetest and most obedient temper. But Fred and George, they had been an handful since the very beginning, absorbing my attention and energy from the start. I didn't have the time to take care of Ron properly. Now I realize the damage I've done to the poor boy. Always insecure, never satisfied, always looking for something more, destined never to achieve it. Always feeling shadowed by older brothers, striving to find a place he never found. I promised myself that it was going to be my last. We were on the verge of a financial collapse. Nobody to help beside Aunt Muriel, who always did so begrudgingly, threatening us with disinheritance at every new child. And then, totally by mistake, not tried for at all, I conceived Ginny. Arthur was so overwhelmed that for the first week of her life couldn't keep his eyes off her, stunned by incredulity. Everybody of us took care of her with the sheer devotion. Bill and Charlie were charmed to have a little sister, and they were always fighting to have the privilege of holding her, covering her with presents as soon as they were old enough to make some money over the summer. Ron had a playfellow to fill that void I didn't have the time to fill, and she received more love than all my sons put together. She was indeed our precious possession, and we weren't so keen to part with her so soon. And Harry, he was a dear, and I knew he would have loved her devotedly. Not having had anybody else to love for all his life, and used not to receive any, very little was needed to conquer his warm loyalty. Any girl with some wit about her would have succeeded probably, which placed him in a great danger considering his situation. And often I mulled this over with some concern. It was easy for him to become a dupe of a woman without scruples. And Ginny, who would have been perfect for anybody, was especially perfect for him, with a strong will and mind, used to stand up to boys and clever. She had everything to make a good wife for him. But I knew that whoever would have married him couldn't hope for an easy life. The popularity was so huge and unchecked, his mind so fragile and constantly under pressure, the scars in his head so many. I wasn't sure whether it was a good choice for her. I must confess I talked to her. I tried to make her see what she stubbornly didn't want to see, but to no avail. She was crazy for him, blinded by the radiance he emitted. She was marrying the person most talked over in the whole world, an international hero. She could only see the glimmer. She didn't see the shadow. I didn't press the matter, understanding that insisting I would have only pushed her even more in his arms, alienating her and him from us. The memory of what happened with my family was very strong with me then. They didn't want me to marry Arthur. He was a nobody without prospect or connection. I could aspire to something more. But Arthur was all I aspired to. They pressed the point so much that a total breach ensued, never healed, until they died, not long after Ginny was born. I didn't want the same with my daughter. We decided to let the things take their course without intervening, promising ourselves we would have always been there to help if needed. But despite our concerns, Jay proved to be an excellent match. Her mind sustained his own, giving it stability, and his love softened her boyishness, making her womanly and ready to cope with all the inconveniences his popularity brought to the couple. Ginny grew up from being a stubborn, rough teenager to be a strong, assured, and caring woman. We have always been proud of her. She helped Eric constantly and steadily healing the scars in his mind, even when Lily died. And he was devastated by sorrow. She had been able to be a sustain to him, despite being scarcely less affected than him. And he repaid her with an utter devotion, keeping her on the pedestal she deserved to be, trying to make her happy in any tiny little thing. An older woman could have very easily taken advantage of it, but not her. It was a lucky day for Harry, the one he married her. And I wouldn't want to say it hasn't been the same for her. But seeing how it ended, I don't know. It's difficult. And it's not fair in regard of Harry, who I always try to be the best husband possible. But perhaps, I don't know. I feel tears coming up, and I cannot allow myself to wail. Not in front of Albus. I need to be strong, for his and James' sake. I'll go and check on Sunrise.
Sunrise is definitely better. We were very scared for her too. She has been under observation for days now. The healers were quite cautious, and they wanted to make sure there are no permanent danger to the brain being so young. But everything seems to be in order. We were sleeping soundly at the burrow when she started to scream and cry, terrified. We couldn't quite understand what the matter was. Ginny told us she very often has nightmares, which always struck me as odd from a 2.5-year-old child. But she wouldn't go back to sleep, and her terror seemed only increasing. We didn't know what to do. I was very worried, and Arthur suggested to take her to San Mango, but you don't take a child to the hospital just for nightmares. Only when, after a couple of hours, the situation hadn't changed, I started to convince myself perhaps he was right. And when I was about to call him to get ready, all her body stiffened forth, and then it started to twitch, then to jerk, then it started convulsing ever stronger. Her eyes bulbs flipped up, and a white foam started to gargle from her mouth. We really grew alarmed, and 2 minutes later we were in San Mango. The healer managed to stop the seizures, but it took quite a long time. I was sick with worry. Arthur tried to call Harry and Ginny in Australia, but the fire seemed blocked. Now we know why. Sunrise went in a deep sleep at once, right after it. The healer said it was a regular sleep brought by the exertion on her body, but I could perceive from his face a shadow. I entreated for clarity, and he spoke about several scary motives for the seizure, not precising any, and stated the necessity of tests to be effectuated to ascertain the reasons and to make sure everything was fine. It was then that the call arrived at the chief healer, and everything changed. Sunrise slept for 20 hours straight, and just when the healer was fearing she might enter in a coma, she woke up, drowsy and confused. By that time, James and Albus had come, and James hadn't left Sunrise's side, not even for a second since then. He barely sleeps and eats. I don't object. I understand he needed to keep himself up. I explained to them what happened, but I sought to screen them from the gruesome. There is no need for them to know. What I told them, it was more than enough to lead them not to want to find out more. The problem will start when they return to Hogwarts, but it is not talked of. No yet, not in the situation we are in. Although it's not that easy here either, when newspapers reporting the accident are everywhere and people in corridors don't talk about anything else. I forbade them to go to the cafe or to wander about. I don't want people to harass them. San Mango kindly offered us the private use of a wall aisle with the fire to travel from here to the Burrow. But nevertheless, keeping us isolated and protected from people's noisiness is a huge task. San Mango has been assaulted as soon as the news leaked, and it's still under siege. Reception had been heaped on by curious. They had to be shoved out, and they started to congregate in front of it, drawing a lot of unwanted attention from muggles. Witches and wizards from the whole world are coming and going with flowers, presents, letters, and all sorts of things. It should be moving, I reckon, but honestly, all tired and dispirited as we are, we would rather prefer everybody to go away and leave us alone. The law enforcement is doing its best to disperse them, but it seems an impossible task. Bill, Charlie, and George are taking turns to guard the aisle, and many a times they had to drive out people who manage to trespass entrance security in a way or other. Percy is too busy with the Daily Prophet, poor dear. He's working nights and days. And Ron, well, he still didn't show up. I left to find the time to talk to him. Hermione tried, but to no avail. But he will do it with me. I'm his mother, after all. Sunrise welcomes me with a smile and starts to chat straight away. The glee on that face moves me more than I can say, and I need to busy myself sorting her clean clothes to hide from James my tears. Poor child, she doesn't know anything yet. She asks daily for Mommy and Daddy, and we all agree to tell her that they are at the sea enjoying themselves. However, all the time I utter this sentence, I cannot refrain tears sliding down. I first smile though, not to alarm her. Eventually, we will have to tell her the truth, but better to wait. I spend with her a few hours giving James some time to eat and have a nap. Those hours are like a balm on my exhausted mind. I can almost forget what is happening, keeping her in my arms, listening to her chat, and answering to her questions. She wants to go to Mommy and Daddy at the sea. I don't want her to. Outside, it is already dark, still very cold. I wish I could convince James and Albus to go to the Barrow for the night, but I don't know if I'll manage to persuade them. They scarcely left the hospital since they got here from Hogwarts. Arthur is surely to Ginny, and I must exert at least him to go home. He spends there the whole day, and it is no good for him. I asked James if he wants to accompany me to visit Ginny. He only darkens, and doesn't even answer. He didn't come a single time. It pains me very much, but I understand, and I don't press him. He's not a child anymore who can be forced. He has a mind of his own. When he will feel he can do so, I'm sure he will. I'm only scared he'll never feel to. I'm going every day, despite my heart is torn every time. But Arthur needs my sustain, and I want her to know we are not going to abandon her. Even if I'm not sure whether she knows, I dearly hope so. I find Arthur sitting down, his eyes hollow. My poor husband, he waits for a miracle. We are surrounded by all the flowers he brought. The forests are lifeless and dry by now. I remove them under his afflicted stare. I sit down by his side and I pin him in my arms as tight as I possibly can. We leave ourselves slide in hushed tears. His body feels so old and fragile against mine, quivered by sobs, weakened by sorrow. How far it seems when quite young he, whistling, was sorting out materials to build a room for Ginny, helped by Bill and Charlie. The beam on his face when talking to them, the love when he looked at me, when he looked at baby Ginevra in my arms. We were poor, but happy in our love. I want to go back to that moment. My poor baby, my poor girl. It took me a while to convince Arthur to get going. He was keeping throwing glances behind his shoulders on the way back, almost if expecting, surely hoping for a sign. But she's smiling suddenly, totally unaware of our sufferance, and we must get used to the notion that this is the only expression in which we will ever see her from now on. Albeit I preach well, but I must struggle to follow my own predicament. Hope is difficult to kill when you love somebody. At the barrow, everything is quiet. Bill is at home with Fleur. I forced him to take an evening off between Gringotts and shift at the hospital. He has not a moment of repose, my poor boy. He is of a great comfort to me, and I hope he gets the same from Fleur. It has been a shock for him to see Ginny when she has been brought to the hospital. He was the first to arrive when I called, and was there when it happened. Fleur and Hermione shared with me every task tirelessly, and I can still see in Hermione's eyes the horror lingering for what she discovered in that room, the horror in front of the fear of being too late. She's the one working the hardest. Harry and Ginny have always been her two best friends. Far from condemn her zealous effort, I comprehend it. But it also means that Ron is left to his own device, and he is not coping well. It has been a big blow to him. He's closed in his old room basically since he got here. I wanted to go to him sooner, but I've been so busy I could hardly spare the time. He is harboring something ugly, and I'm determined to entreat for openness on his side. I found him sitting on his bed in semi-darkness. Hermione is at the hospital. She comes home only to sleep, and sometimes not even then. I sit close to him, and I put a hand on his leg affectionately. Can you believe that while she was being tortured, I was swinging on the hammock looking at the sea? He says wistfully, looking somewhere else. I lower my eyes, sighing. The poor boy was only waiting for the chance to talk with somebody, and I'm sorry it took me so long to give him the chance of confiding. There were so many things and people to tend to. It seems as there has always been in my life something more pressing than tend to him. You couldn't know. Don't torment you with this. But it's as though he didn't hear my answer. I was there, a building away, next door, dozing, he says darkly, and she was being tortured by a madman. It's not your fault, I say, tightening my grip on his leg to mark my words. I don't want him to be carried away with these grim reflections. I know it's not, he says, looking finally at me with those blue eyes, the same shade of Arthur's. On my adding something, he precedes me. He was Harry's. I'm so taken aback, I don't know what to say for a moment. It's no, I stammer, but it tells me off. He left her alone. And those eyes become so dark, albeit being so light, they almost scare me. There is a hardness in them that wasn't there when he was a child, a bitterness, a dissatisfaction that grows with every passing year. And it has been worrying me for already some time. Ron, he was working. There was a breakout going on. I tried to say, but he booms enraged. This is not an excuse. Ginny had to be first, not his sodding job. He left her alone. If he stayed on her side, nothing of the kind would have happened. That dark wizard was deranged. He wanted Harry. He would have lured him out somehow. He would have gone for the boys or for Sunrise to lure him. I say disconsolate, and I shudder in thinking about us, with Sunrise here unprotected, and what could have happened. But you see, Ron exclaimed, getting red and sprinting up, going to the window. It's his fault. In any case, it would have been his fault. Our family really got the worst deal mingling with him. We had to distance ourselves from him. We had to understand he could only bring troubles. This is unfair, I replied, scandalized. The poor man hardly deserved this. Harry has always been a good husband and a good father. He always put everybody's welfare before his own, and you know this very well. I continued stern, letting the last sentence coming out as a slight reproach. But his vexation is uncheckable. Why do you always defend him? Why does everybody always defend him after all what he has done, after all that he has failed to do? He shouts upset. And I think about what Hermione recounted me when she got to the hospital. How Harry, massacred and wrecked, was shielding Ginny with his own body. I think about the healer told me, all the crucio he got. And I don't understand. Ron was there. He has seen it too. He had heard it too. Why doesn't she feel any pity, as I do, but only this utter, out-of-place hate? Because he has always been a good man, I reply simply. I'm a good man too, for Christ's sakes! He yells, slamming his hands on the windowsill. My heart is heavy, hearing him utter this sentence that reveals so much. There is a word of meanings. I know you are, I said, patting the bed on my side, inviting him to sit down close to me. You are indeed a good man, I continue, at him sitting, limp, after the outburst, listening to me with cast eyes. I take my son's head, kissing the forehead of this man who for all his life felt not to be enough, always comparing himself with everybody else around him and suffering by his inability to be up to his personal expectation. It's our fault though. Nobody of us never succeeded in making him feel important. And seeing him here alone, wrapped in his discomfort, knowing where Hermione surely is not, I get the hunch of something else too that probably bothers him. You are a good husband too, I say softly. He shakes his head and flops on himself, his head hanged, hair covering his face. I'm not a good husband. Of course you are, I say sweetly, encircling him with my arm. Mom, if I was, she would love me. And the distress is so palpable. I know I hit the mark. He lets me hug him limply, his voice slightly choked. But she loves you, I say, more to be of any reassurance than for conviction. Hearing my words, he looks up at me, and there, after the distress, I see again the hardening. We both know she doesn't, and we both know who she always loved. I falter under the gaze, understanding his meaning. I would dearly love to disabuse him, to tell him that it's not true, that he was the one preferred. But I always taught my children not to tell lies, and I must abide to the same rule, because it's incontrovertible. If she would love him, she would be here, I hate him, he says under his voice, and then he closes his eyes, ever so slowly, and his face crumples while he leaves himself go to grief. I hold my dear boy in my arms, trying to soothe all that ache. The late traumatizing events are unleashing incomprehensible feelings. Because I know he doesn't hate him at all. He only hates the fact that he has always loved him, really. And I don't know why, but I find myself thinking how we, women, are considered the weaker sex. I never comprehend it, unless only physical power is meant, because in all my life, all the women I met had an incredible force, boldness, and endurance I scarcely found in men. They might be stronger than us in day-to-day events, but when things are really going down, they cling to us for strength, for reassurance, for consolation. And it's only thanks to us if they can handle what seems unbearable. And this truth is strong with me while I lull my youngest son in his pain. It's strong with me when I take Arthur's hand. It's strong with me when I see Bill keeping hold of Fleur. And it was strong with me watching Harry and Ginny together. I hate Harry, Ron repeats, sobbing, still in my arms. I don't know what to reply, reflecting on the enormous shadow Harry has always unawarely and faultlessly projected on my boy. But then I wonder, is there any point feeling all this bitterness now? I'm at the hospital. I convinced Arthur to stay at home with Ron. I hope he will get some repose. James is as usual in Sunrise's room, and Albus is with me, writing a letter to Rose. She has been back to Hogwarts for already a few days, and they are writing to each other so often that Regina is starting to get upset. Albus is overworking her. I'm sorry she had to go back. Albus was decidedly better when she was here. Now he's spending all his time either writing, eyes rimmed red, or sleeping on the armchair I brought here for him, or staring fixedly at the bed, hoping. However, Hermione didn't want her to be in this environment and thought it best to send her back. Hugo spent all his time with John at the Burrow, who is the least involved of us all, having seen so little of Harry and Ginny in his life far away in a different country. Perhaps it's for the best. At least Hugo can divert his thoughts. I know they will need to be back very soon. Charlie told me he cannot stay for more than a couple of days yet, and it's the same for Ron. It seems so impossible that the situation might improve in this brief space of time. I'm looking at the bed, hoping to see something encouraging. I don't know what, anything. But everything is so still. I can only hear the quill scratching the paper from the corner where Albus is writing. I look in his direction. I can clearly see tears dropping from his cheeks on the parchment. He stops writing, and with some blotting paper tries to mop them away. But they keep on falling, making his act useless. On him realizing I was observing him, he half smiles, sitting back on the chair. I made a mess, he only says, chuckling, fiddling with his quill still in his hands. Oh dear, I say, try to keep my eyes dry. It doesn't matter. He looks at the bed and sighs. The ward is silent. I can hear only a ticketing of heels on the tiles far off. Perhaps today, I hazard as a comforting word. He smiles, mopping his eyes. Perhaps. He murmurs, shrugging his shoulders. But I can see it is said without conviction. It is said only for me, to reassure me. At that moment, All our attention is captured toward the door as a sudden mayhem is heard. Somebody is shouting. There is commotion in the corridor. I gesture Albus to stay. It is not the first time it happens. Surely somebody is trying to get past the aisle. I hurry over there, and I see a girl, brunette, and very showily dressed, struggling to overtake Bill, who has just grabbed her by the shoulders to prevent her coming forward. "Keep your filthy hands off of me, old pervert, or I report you for sexual harassment!" she shouts. Bill, as if touching fire, let her go straight away, but George, who doesn't let himself being put off so easily, step in, blocking her. "You don't get anywhere, love," he says wearily. We are all beyond tired of this continuous meddling. Why cannot people just respect our situation and leave us be? "Let me go!" she shouts, flailing to get free. "I have every right to be here. I want to pay a visit. I'm a friend." "Yeah, right. And I'm the Minister of Magic. Go home to Mommy and Daddy, would you?" "I ain't got any Mommy and Daddy, you knobhead. Ginny and Harry are all I've got," she yells enraged. And then, out of the blue, she bites very hard George's hand, who, emitting a shriek, let her go straight away. "You bitch!" he blurts out, grasping his hand while she is already springing forward. "George!" I bellow, scandalized. "She beat me!" he retorts, managing to grasp her wrist before she can slip in the aisle. "I don't care. I won't allow this kind of language in my children's mouth, doesn't matter what." I hurry forward, turning my attention to the girl. "This is hardly an acceptable behavior, young lady," I apostrophize there. "You should show a bit of respect for our situation." "I want to pay a visit," she mutters darkly. "I'm a friend." "I'm afraid that won't be possible," I reply with finality. "If we should let pass everybody who states itself a friend, this place would be overcrowded." I don't trust anybody unless real proof of being so can be produced. And I'm pretty sure this young girl, with definitely too much makeup on, if I may say so, hasn't got any. "I'm Regina," she says, I'm turning away, and that stops me. Jenny told me about a girl answering to that name, a poor dear with a very difficult background, who she has taken under her protection, finding her a job and a decent place to live. I look at her again, more closely, suspicious. She, seeing my hesitation, carry on. "I know Harry and Ginny's address." And lowering her voice, she reveals it to me quite correctly. George, stunned, let her go. "I want to pay a visit," she repeats. I'm speechless for a moment. But then, seeing her so keen and reading what's behind the ferocious expression and the excess of makeup, my heart melts. "There is no—" I stammer, my voice choked. And then, clearing it, I try again. "If you read the papers, you might already know there is not really any point to a visit, dear," I say this time sweetly. "But I'm glad to have finally met you." Squeezing her tight, "Ginny spoke very highly of you. I'm her mother." She abandons herself to my hug, and despite she's clearly not a child, it feels like she's still one in the way she leaves herself being held. She mustn't have had many motherly hugs in her life. I had exactly the same feeling the first time I hugged Harry. "I read the papers, but I'd like to say hello anyway, if you don't mind," she murmurs, a bit more politely. "Of course, child." And taking her around the shoulders, I push her gently through the corridor. She lingers a second, looking behind to George and Bill. "Sorry for the threat and the pie," she says, serious. "It's alright," George says, frowning, massaging his hand. Sorry for the bitch. George! I bellowed warningly, at which both Bill and George grinned, taking back their position. We head toward the room, and entering, I see Albus startle. Regina! He exclaimed, standing up. But she only glanced briefly at him, her eyes drawn to the bed. The sight petrifies her, and the torrent of tears traced two black lines of mascara on her cheeks. I take a tissue from the table and I mop those tears affectionately. She wails a thanks, and I push her gently forward, making her sit on the chair I was occupying until only a moment before. She leaves herself being conducted there, and once sitting, she reaches out, taking the limp hand which rested on the white sheet. The hand has been held by so many people since we are here. I found Hermione sleeping on this very chair. Her head rested on the bed's edge, her hand in it only this morning. I always hold it too. Are there any chance of? She asked, not averting her gaze from the bed. No many, I say honestly, and every passing day thin them. She nods imperceptibly. Albus observes her for a while, and then sits himself down, returning to his letter. I sit a bit farther away to give her some privacy. She draws her chair closer, and resting her head on the pillow, I see her whispering something in those ears. I wonder if they can pick up any sound. We all in turns spoke to them. We entreated, we pleaded, we simply chatted, but none of our words sorted any effect. I watched with a slight curiosity, a mild hope. Perhaps the sound of her voice will succeed where we failed. But it doesn't seem to. There is no movement, no reaction. Oh, Harry, please wake up. A quarter of an hour passed in this way. I look out of the window into the garden. This room gives to the back of the building. The garden is totally fictional, of course, but it has been remarked that greenery helps to keep passion spirit up. That's why the garden. Here, it can benefit only us. Harry has never seen it. Ginny didn't either. Sunrise asks daily to be brought there. There is a swing, eternally empty. Harry has been lying immobile in that bed for a week now. When they brought him here, he had been stabilized by the Australian healers, but nevertheless more dead than alive. The healers here worked tirelessly for hours, trying every spell, every potion, every plant, every remedy they could think of. Pi is in a deep coma, and nothing else can be done if not speaking to him and try to bring him back. He hasn't been left alone for a second. We take turns. Albus is basically living in this room. I convince him with a huge effort to go at least once a day to the burrow to take a shower and sleep in a proper bed, but after scarcely an hour, is unfailingly back in here. James, on the other side, didn't show up. Not a single time. He gave me such a death stare when I suggested it. I grew quite scared, and I let the matter drop. I can only imagine what is passing in his head, and I don't like it at all. In the garden, everything is quiet and forlorn. The season there respects the real season, and spring is still so far away. Regina has stopped whispering and only observes his profile as in a trance. She doesn't see me watching her. She doesn't hear Albus sealing his letter. She's alone with her thoughts and hopes, and when, ever so slowly, she rises from her chair, I think she has only decided to get going. I'm about to stand up too, to say farewell, but I'm stopped in mid-gesture. She's not going. She lingers there, observing him. Then she passes her very well manicured hand in his hair, smoothing back his curls with a familiarity that slightly startles me. She stoops over him. Her hair falls gently around her face, covering Harry's one too. But it's anyway visible what is happening behind that brown curtain. She's kissing him. A little more than a peck, but still a little less than something that might offend. I don't say anything, still immobile, on my half-raised position. I don't intervene. At first, because I can see that kiss is quite an innocent kiss. Whilst, as she pushes back her hair, I can detect her lips forming a whispered declaration in full form. I can also see there is no malice in what she is doing, and I don't judge necessary to intervene. But what really paralyzed me in my uncomfortable position and take my breath away, it is not that. It is something I'm not even sure it actually happened, so stunning it seems. I blink to make sure I'm seeing it right. My sight is not as good as it used to be. But I'm not fooling myself. Harry's fingers twitched. It is not the same limp hand I'm used to see for the last week. There has been a twitch, and the second one confirming what I saw. I'm so petrified, my heart quite stopped, my mouth half open, ready to speak, can produce no sound. I endeavor to force myself, but it seems beyond my strength to do anything more than gaping stupidly. Although, at the third twitch, I finally unfroze. Albus! I bellow, making the two youths startle visibly. What? Albus asks, and alarmed by my tone, looks immediately in the same direction as me, although not spotting anything. Go and look for the healer, I order peremptorily. She is on a break. She told me, go and look for another one now! I interrupt him. Startled by my order and my fixed expression, he glances again to Harry's hand and finally sees Chew. He flings from his chair toward the door as fast as the lightning. Regina, seeing all this commotion and imputing to what she has done, starts to fret and apologize. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be disrespectful toward Ginny, she stammers. I rush to her side. No, dear, don't worry, it is not that, but you must get out now, please, I say as gently as I possibly can, pushing her toward the door. She looks behind her shoulder toward the bed, and her eyes becoming as big as two saucers. Fast, I do the same, spotting a little frown which makes me panic. Sorry, dear, but you must go. But, she say, trying to get free from my grasp. You must go, I say with finality, pushing her outside the room and closing the door behind her. I ran back to Harry's side, taking his head and calling his name repeatedly. He squints. Ginny, he murmurs, seeing my eyes. Then he squints again and, focusing, laughs softly. I'm sorry, Molly. I thought you were Ginny for a moment. I must have been dreaming, he says, rising from the pillow, but he winces, taking hand on his front. My head hurts. Lie down, Harry dear, I entreat, trying to push him gently down, my voice trembling. I'm fine, he says, resisting my entreaties. It's just a little headache. And then, looking around him at the room. Where am I? What's this place? And then, the dreaded question. Where is Ginny? I choke over my own words. We are at San Mango. Everything is fine. Lie down. The healer is coming. He looks about him some more, sitting up, and then addressing me again. Why in San Mango? Where is Ginny? I think I had a nightmare, quite a nasty one. He gobbles, massaging his temples and grimacing. Fuck, it hurts, he mutters. It's everything fine, you don't have to worry. But my voice is strangely high-pitched, and I find myself not able to meet his eyes. I busy myself with the blanket, smoothing it. But he's beginning to emerge from the confusion, and not receiving any answer to his questions, he starts to fret. Molly, where is Ginny? Why are we here? Harry, lie down. I try to say in a reassuring tone, pushing him back gently. He doesn't allow it. He grasps my hands to get my attention. Molly, where is Ginny? He asks, and this time it is less a confused gabble and more a steady question from a person who is starting to put the pieces together, a person who is starting to understand that he cannot be fine at all if he is in a hospital. She is fine, Harry. She is only sleeping in the next room, I say, forcing a smile, but I find myself again not able to sustain those glaring green eyes on me, and slipping my hands from his grasp, I divert my own, piecing myself again with the blanket. He endeavors to free himself from it, rather agitated. I'll go then. I need to see her. I stop him before he can get out of bed. No, Harry! I exclaim alarmed. You cannot go. You'll see her later. Lie down. He yells. Suddenly, something from my expression or my tone of voice must have tipped him off. Molly, why are we in San Mango? How is Ginny? Harry, dear, how is she? He asks now vehemently. Closing my eyes to gather the energy needed to make the communication I ought to make, I take a big breath. Behind my eyelids, all what happened when they brought them here hours later unravelled itself, pallid, emaciated, covered with blood, Hermione and Ron following with faces as white as ghosts, 6 healers taking them away in a rush, our long waiting, a healer coming out a moment to tell us hope are small, both unconscious, organs damaged, they were doing their best, they have both been tortured repeatedly. Ginny had lost a lot of blood, they have both been stabilized, but very weak. Nevertheless, I could barely distinguish the words. Another long waiting. James and Albus coming, accompanied by Neville. The explanations, the tears, the words of comfort, and then only the silent long waiting. A healer, green-faced and worn out, coming out again. Billy and Arthur sprinting up, followed by Albus and James, all asking, eager for news. And then I can only visualize Arthur, day after day, taking new flowers to our poor girl who is smiling to us, unable to thank him. Harry, she was very weak when they brought her here. The healers have done all what they could, but... Arthur, who kneels on the fresh smoother hearth, posing those flowers. But... Lily, smiling close to her. She died after a few hours. The air is so still around us, is so real. There should be sounds. There are always some kind of sounds in a hospital. But there is nothing. Or maybe it's just me who cannot pick up any. Harry is staring at me fixedly. I see, he says at the end. I see how it is. He stammers, nodding feebly, and I know he hasn't grasped the notion at all. And I'm relieved. I was already regretting to have said that much in such a moment. He must be still confused. We still have some time. The healer will help me in this. I'm only having a nightmare, he adds, still nodding. One of my nightmares. Now I'll lie down, I'll sleep, and then Ginny will wake me up. My heart is closed in a tenacious grip. Harry, I say, unsure on how proceed. Now I'll lie down, I'll sleep, and then Ginny will wake me up. He repeats, this time darkly, as if daring me to say otherwise. I don't. I only blink to keep back tears, and I smile. Sure, if we are lucky, you are right. We may all wake up. I murmur as he lie down. I put the blanket on him. Sleep now, I say reassuringly. For a moment, I think he will. He closes his eye, but it's only for a moment. They sprang open seconds later, fixing on the wall in front of him. I'm undecided whether to speak, but the times he takes me to the side, it's the time it takes him to understand he is not dreaming. A grimace contorts his whole face, and as he crouches on himself, a loud, thrashing, groveling howl coming right from his bowels fills the room. I cannot help but wince, and a sob escapes my lips. I'd like to caress him, but I don't dare. The howling won't stop, his face hidden by his hair, by his hands pulling it. It's so intense and loud that the door sprang open. Regina, George, and Bill are on it, but I cannot do more than stare astounded by the scene. Thankfully, at that moment, I hear the hurried steps of the healer. She pushes roughly Bill and George aside and rushes to the bed. Albus has stopped on the threshold amid the others, gaping too. Between my sobs, I start to apologize. "I'm sorry," I gabble, stumbling on my words. "He wanted to know and I didn't know how to." But the healer is not listening to me. She opens with a key a cupboard, extracting a vial. She flings toward Harry, who's crying and transforming himself in a desperate wailing. "Potter, now you must drink this," she orders loudly, trying to cover the wail. "Sit up and drink this." I'm not even sure he heard her. The healer gestured Bill to come forward, but when they tried to touch him, the wail transformed himself in loud growl. "Leave me alone!" They both flinch and step back. "Potter, leave me alone!" As the injunction gets repeated louder and louder, we all understand there is no point in staying. George, recovered from the shock, is on my side just in time to sustain me. My legs suddenly weak, I don't know how long would have supported me. He pushes me toward the door, shoving back Albus, who seems on the verge of coming forward, and Regina, that is hardly better able to stand than me, supporting herself on the frame of the door. Before to get out, I can hear the healer saying on Harry's voice, "We are going now. I'll just leave you this vial. It's sleeping potion. Take it when you can." And then we are all out of the room, closing the door behind us. The cry is unabating, and then we hear a crash that makes the healer, her hand still on the knob, wince. And then another, and the thump, and then there is only silence. It is not exactly an absolute silence. As soon as Harry's cry stops, our Sunrise screams, the one merging with James shouting for me, terrified, in the background. Me and the healer run there, and Sunrise, crimson in the face, is screaming and thrashing in James' arms. "Grandma!" he exclaims, frightened and rocking her. "She just started out of the blue. I cannot calm her down." "Mommy, mommy!" is the only intelligible word, repeated over and over while she's flailing dangerously. The healer intervenes, gesturing me to take her from James, but even before this passage is complete, the scream is quenched already in a whimper. She puts her plump arms around my neck. "Grandma," she moans. "Grandma, I want mommy." I smoothen her curls while the healer is all busy with her wand pointed over her temple, pronouncing incantations under her voice. "Yes, my dear, I know you want mommy, but she cannot come," I reply wistfully, following every gesture of the healer, searching her eyes. "And Daddy?" she asks, sniffing. "Daddy cannot come either," I say, "but he's fine." In the meanwhile, the healer nods slightly in my direction, reassuring me. It was only a tantrum, not the beginning of a seizure, as we were all fearing. Probably she heard Harry screaming. "He's not fine," she moans, putting her head on my shoulder. I wanna go to Daddy. Another time, sweetie, I say, taking her to bed, James following us like a shadow. You must sleep now, I add sweetly. Wait, Jamie. She whines, her eyes still full of tears. Yes, midget, I'm here, he says, sitting close to her on the edge of the bed, and only then she relaxes and starts to close her eyes, clutching James' jumper with one hand and starting to suck her thumb with the other. James caresses her absent-minded, but he has got a truculent look on his face watching us all. What the hell is going on? He mouths. Albus is the only one ready to answer, and not to be heard by Sunrise slumbering. He mouths back. Dad woke up.